Have you ever been alone in a hospital late at night and encountered things you can't explain? Welcome to Psychomanteum. I'm Karin Shah. Here we venture into the other side of the mirror, paranormal mysteries, scary stories, and all things supernatural. If that sounds like your jam, and if you like what you hear, please drop a like so we can grow. Now, gather round, everyone. I think everybody considers hospitals a scary place. Even without them being a place where people die, there's the constant lack of control. You're having things done to you, things you may not completely understand. You put your life into other people's hands. Even under the most controlled conditions, going under anesthesia puts you completely at the mercy of the anesthesiologist. It's a place where people are very close to the boundary between life and death, a place from which many people never return. A few years ago, I found myself back in the emergency department of my local hospital. I have a condition that my doctors can't really explain, and sometimes lands me in the hospital. As a result, I found myself assigned a battery of tests. Over the years, I've become very familiar with the system. The way it always works is the transporter comes for you. They unhook your bed from the machines monitoring you. Then they wheel you through the maze of the hospital, up and down corridors and into elevators, and you often find yourself laying on the hospital bed alone in a corridor, waiting for your turn for the CT scan or the MRI or an ultrasound. This particular time, I knew I had to have one of these tests, but I had just come in that day, and I was sure as it was getting late that I wouldn't get into the test until the morning, meaning I would have to extend the time I had to stay in the hospital, which, in addition to being a place I naturally don't enjoy, is a very expensive place. But around midnight, to my surprise and elation, the transporter came for me. I was going to be squeezed in that night. He wheeled me in my bed, down the corridor, into an elevator, and positioned me outside the imaging department. Then he left, presumably to his next job. A few minutes later, the technician came for me, and before I knew it, the test was over, and I was back in the hall waiting for the next transporter. The hospital is usually pretty noisy, even at night. Beeping monitors, nurses typing or talking softly, the sound of staff moving around checking blood pressures, etc. But this department is far from the beds, and it was quiet. The kind of quiet that has a sound of its own. And I began to feel a little uneasy. Time doesn't seem to exist in these situations. It's as if no time and yet hours pass while you wait. As I lay alone in the corridor, I began to notice how dark it was in the hall, how widely spaced the lights were, and how deep the shadows between them were. Just as I was noticing this, the lights began to flicker and dim. If I had been attached to the heart monitor at that moment, it would have shown a jump in my pulse. I wasn't scared yet, but I was just starting to feel the crawling fingers of anxiety up and down the back of my neck. Of course, I'm not a child anymore to be afraid of the dark, and I reassured myself that even if the lights went out altogether, there was nothing that could hurt me in a hospital corridor. Then the lights flickered again, long enough for the hallway to be completely dark for a split second, and when they returned, they were dimmer, and they revealed something, a person, or so it seemed, standing at the end of the corridor. I gasped in surprise. Whoever they were, they stood just before where the hall bent to go to the elevators, maybe 7 paces away. As I stared at the person, I realized I could see the vague outline of a fire extinguisher through its dark torso. It wasn't solid. This wasn't a person. The realization sent my heart rate soaring. I suddenly couldn't catch my breath, and my panting showed something else. The corridor had become intensely cold. I couldn't see my breath, but when my breath stirred the air, I could feel the cold against my cheeks. I brought my hands up to my face, and my breath felt hot in contrast. Knowing I had to be imagining things, I closed my eyes and opened them again, thinking surely the figure would be gone. But as I opened them again, the lights flickered once more, this time taking a long heartbeat, and when the light returned, the figure wasn't gone. Worse, it was closer. I swept the corridor with my gaze, desperately searching for someone to save me, to corroborate what I was seeing. I don't know. The light flickered again. When it came back, I almost screamed in alarm. Once more the figure was closer, and now I should be able to see its features, but its face was so dark I couldn't tell whether it was a man or a woman, young or old. All I could see were two dark pits where eyes should be, and a dark slash of mouth. As I processed what little I could see of its features, its mouth began to stretch, curving up into a horrible grin, the corners rising unnaturally high. I shrank back on the hospital bed, my hands patting the sheets as if I could find a weapon on the crumpled surface. I was so scared I felt like running, but I was tethered to an IV, trapped on the bed. I considered trying to grab my IV from the pole and bolting, but the high side rails of the bed meant I would have to scoot down to the end of the bed toward the entity to escape. And even if I could run, where would I go? The figure was between me and the elevators. I had no idea where in the hospital I was in relation to the ED, and I couldn't imagine bursting into the imaging suite. All I could do was grip the plastic side rails of the bed in terror, my eyes glued to the shadowy figure as if I could pin it in place or will it to disappear. But to my horror, the light blinked again, and the figure moved with it. Now it was at the foot of my bed, still grinning as if playing with me. A fetid odor rolled over me. It smelled of the sickly sweet odor of decomposing flesh. My heart couldn't beat any harder or faster. My pulse rushed like a freight train in my ears. A scream rose in my throat. I could already feel it tearing at the tender lining, and yet I didn't release it. Screaming would mean I would have to take a breath, and I couldn't. The pain of holding my breath swelled in my chest. Again, the light flickered, and now the thing was in the bed with me at my feet. I say in, but it was actually standing through the bed. I exhaled in shock, the built-up scream no more than an airy squeak. It was close enough now to fill in a nose and jutting cheekbones between the eyes and too wide mouth, the rotting corpse stench of it all around me. The figure reached toward me, hands like claws, long fingernails gleaming in the dim light. I flinched back, terrified, pasting my back to the raised head of the bed, the hands lowered toward me, heading toward my neck. It was going to strangle me. A wave of cold sweat washed over me. My hands flew up to protect my neck. Just as its hands were about to touch me, I heard the ding of the elevators. The door is open, and the sound of footsteps, just the ordinary sound of soft soles on shiny vinyl floors. The figure vanished in front of my eyes. I stared at the place the figure had stood for a moment, fearing it would return. When it didn't, I blinked, my brain struggling to accept it was gone for good, my chest still quivering in terror. I heard my name and turned my head to see a young woman approaching the bed. My lips parted. "Did you see that?" The words formed, but I didn't say them. She smiled, her whole demeanor saying everything was routine. If I said something about the figure, I would come across as a lunatic. The woman reached for my wristband and verified my name and date of birth, then began wheeling me back to the ED. The whole time, I tried to regain my composure while hiding my ebbing panic. By the time we got to the elevators, my heart rate had slowed to near baseline. Still, once we were in the elevator, I kept my eyes glued to the corridor, unable to relax. It looked completely normal, the ceiling lights reflecting evenly off the pale beige walls. But just as the door closed, I saw the lights flicker, and for a split second, I thought I saw a sliver of a dark shoulder and arm. I glanced up at the transporter, but she hummed quietly to herself. Clearly, she hadn't seen anything. I was happy to return to the bustling ED. Luckily, that was my last test. I was released in the morning. I've never told anyone this story. Part of me thinks I just hallucinated the whole thing. I had been tired. Maybe I had fallen asleep without knowing, and what I saw was just sleep paralysis. But as much as I want to believe that's what happened, I just can't. I know I was awake during that last glimpse, at least. Nothing else strange has happened to me since. I haven't had to go to the hospital since then either, and I hope I don't have to return for a very long time. Thanks for listening. Please drop us a like and subscribe. In the following days, look for more stories, both true and fictional, and explorations of all things creepy and unexplained. If you have a story to share, drop an email to the address in the description. Until next time, think twice before you look behind you in the mirror. There may be something on the other side.